wants the government to shut down? There's a question. You can just hear who's asking for concessions and things that aren't even there right now, but we'll come back to that. It is Tuesday. Good morning. J Dog on the boards. We have a absolutely another beautiful day out there, and yesterday was gorgeous. Enjoy it. Just milk this weather. This is the kind of stuff that we like. We're right at that. Hard to believe, J Dog, about to bring in another month tomorrow. Our poll question up on X at the Pulse of NH this morning. By the way, our expanded signals up into Maine, additional FM 98.7, FM2, FM HD2, digital clarity in addition to 98.1 FM 1270 AM, Seacoast and New Hampshire up in the Maine Lakes region. We have you blanketed and covered. 107.3 FM, 1490 AM on the dial if you're listening. Up and down the roadways and in and around Guilford, all the way up in the lakes, and of course 98.3 FM HD2 in the Lakes region, 107.7 FM worldwide, and thousands of you each morning are listening on smart devices and our app on your smartphone, so you're even smarter. Hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of NH, our poll question up on X, and we'll give you the results shortly from yesterday. And we're going to have a fun one today. It's J-Dog's Ideas, our sports director. What do you have for us, J-Dog, on our poll question on X? That gets underway tonight, 5:08, the pregame, and we'll have it for you as we have had all the Sox games right here on the Pulse of New Hampshire, your official Red Sox home here as they go into the postseason against the Yankees. How appropriate. J-Dog, I did not catch. I was at a buddy's birthday event last night, his 70th. He's older than me and wiser. J-Dog, last night I didn't catch any of the results of the games yet on the NFL side. Ooh. Yeah. All right. Thank you, J-Dog. Okay, we have the government shutdown to break down and talk about this morning. We're going to have some live analysis, the very latest, and it's a moving picture, a moving diagram or scenario, if you want. Very fluid. These things usually are. As you've heard me say for years, what a way to run a federal government. Out of control debt, almost $38 trillion. And they keep continuing spending resolutions to keep the government open. So this one's ticking down, and it's an unusual dynamic this time because there still could be some kind of a short-term deal to avoid a government shutdown. Now, the next day or so, we'll tell you what that means. You just heard in our Fox News who might be impacted, what services you might see. As usually, there's 11th hour deals in these things. But at this point, it's going to be interesting to see. Now, I am going to just point out, and I mean this sincerely, I don't care what your politics are. I'm just telling you the fact. A couple of years ago, because they've been doing this every 6 months I can't remember how long it's been. You don't run your business like this. You don't run your home like this. You don't run your apartment, your condominium, your as I said, your business, your home business, or state governments like this. Every 6 months is a manufactured crisis of a looming government shutdown. Every 6 months or so, a looming government shutdown. What they do, they kick the can down the road. They pass some kind of a continuing resolution. Everyone just sort of holds their nose, and then the government stays open. We're talking federal government. And, a couple of years ago, when the Democrats and Chuck Schumer had the majority in the Senate, I remember this very, very clearly. And I don't care, again, your politics. I respect your political point of view. If it doesn't agree with mine, that's fine. That's more than fine. But my memory is my memory. Correct me if I'm wrong. A couple of years ago, when the Freedom Caucus, you remember people like Brad Card, one of our political analysts and our All-Stars and others, and co-host of Contact Politics would say, well, the Freedom Caucus, they don't want to vote for this continuing resolution. They want spending cuts, and now's not the time to have spending cuts. They just got to keep the government open. No one wants to close the federal government. No one wants to, quote unquote, default on our obligations. And everyone seems to politically not want to be the one where the finger is pointed at you for shutting down the federal government, because after a while it gets inconvenient for some. Federal employees, a lot of them, veteran or military members. You look at the checks going out in the mail, if you will. I think Social Security continues, but you know what I'm saying. No one wants to see it because of the disruption in services. So politically, it's toxic. No one wants to touch it. So a couple of years ago, whenever the Freedom Caucus would kick and scream about the debt and continuing to spend, and they'd always cave, Chuck Schumer said, "You cannot default on our government's obligations. You can't allow the federal government to shut down. You can't make these concessions. You can't ask for spending cuts while I'm trying to keep the government open." We'll talk about that later. I heard that for how many? 4 years? The Biden administration, every looming government shutdown. We'll talk about spending cuts later. You can't demand that now. You can't demand that now. We'll talk about this later. Got to keep the government open. And right now, 11th hour, federal government's about to close. Now Schumer and the gang and the Democrat side. This is a fact. This is not politics. This is a fact. This is not political. Schumer wants concessions. The Democrats want concessions. Things like health care cuts, allegedly, in the big, beautiful bill, don't even kick into over a year from now, like 2 years. They want concessions. One of the ones a week ago was they wanted public broadcasting funding restored. What in the HE double hockey sticks that has to do with keeping the government open? They want concessions. So the same person who yelled and screamed that you can't ask for spending cuts on the eve of government shutdown now wants concessions, or they won't vote for it. So who wants the government to shut down? It's funny. The Democrats want to blame Republicans. They want to see a shutdown. They want to see President Trump, and the Republicans get blamed. Republicans want a straight up clean spending, continuing resolution to keep the government funded. That's it. They just want to continue it. Democrats are asking for these concessions. The Republicans won't agree to. But the Democrats used to say a couple of years ago, you can't ask for concessions on the eve of government shutdown. You can't ask for spending cuts while we're trying to keep the government open and meet our obligations. Isn't it funny how politics works or doesn't work in Washington? Rather remarkable this morning. Secretary of War in the War Department, no longer Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, addressing a group of generals and higher level military. And this is rather remarkable. Hegseth, it's just beginning. The president's going to address this sort of the upper echelon of our military leaders and branches. Pete Hegseth began by basically saying, and we'll have some of the sound, John Decker, our own White House correspondent, coming up. I couldn't believe at the top of the hour. I mean, I think this Hegseth comes out. If you think the days of woke and wokeness, or the woke policies, are still around in the Department of Defense, now Secretary of or the Department of War, if you think wokeness or woke is still there, it's gone. Hegseth began calling it out right away. The days of woke are gone. There's no more woke here. No more. He also talked about the military and the branches being in better shape. And he actually said, one of his lines this morning saying, treat the military units like you treat your own kid, and you don't want them serving with people who are fat and out of shape. His words, not mine. Pete Hegseth going right to it this morning, addressing the new era of the Secretary of War, or the War Department. So we're going to have much more on this, but the days of woke in the military, according to the Secretary of War, are over. So we'll hear. And he said, if this gives you an uneasy feeling in your stomachs, he said this morning, then do the honorable thing and resign. I don't think there's not hold back many punches this morning. President Trump will be addressing that group as well. Coming up as well, Dean Spiliotis will talk about the government shutdown and the politics in and around the government shutdown in a little bit. And also get a check-in on gold and silver reaching record highs. Adam Van with Alpine Gold, one of our great sponsors out there and partners. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. We are back in just a moment.
NH Daily Poll is now live on X. Brought to you by OutdoorGold.com. Good morning, New Hampshire. Live from the Outdoor Pride Studios. Outdoor Pride is the Granite State's largest landscape and snow management group. Serving commercial properties from Manchester to Freeport.
We're open now. All right, J-Dog. Brad Card, one of our regular contributors, actually the government, the real chance of a federal government shutdown act actually has him working a little extra hard in Washington right now. So he'll join us a bit later. But I want to come back to, one, just my opinion on something, and we'll open up the lines if you want to comment, 603-228-2080. And I think of Laura and Franklin has spoken about this in the corporate world, how kind of the DEI diversity focus kind of got, out of control on steroids. And I mean that. And, I talked for the last several years about this woke stuff happening at universities and cities and towns and school districts, administration, and corporate America across the board. This woke, it's been a long time, number of years, been building and building and building diversity, DEI. You've heard these terms, DEI, woke. Well, this morning, if there's any doubt if it exists anymore in the U.S. military, openly that is, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth denouncing diversity, saying the diversity focus and the diversity era, the woke era in the U.S. military is over. And if that gives you an uneasy feeling in your stomach, do the honorable thing and resign. He's addressing top military leaders. President Trump will follow up today. Hegseth went on to talk about many of the military leaders being out of shape, physically speaking. He criticizes this morning military leaders who are overweight. In fact, I'm just going to tell you what Hegseth said. He used the term fat, overweight. I'm going to get into shape and send a better example. The executive order also, recently renaming the Secretary or Department of War. So foolish and reckless political leaders set the wrong compass heading, and we lost our way. Hegseth said we became the woke department. Hegseth saying we became the woke department as he kicked off this event at Quantico. It's where it's happening this morning. John Decker will be coming up in a moment. So this is rather interesting because it's so direct. Something you don't hear from corporate leaders or leaders in general anymore. Everyone's afraid to be very direct. And Hegseth is not saying that, not anymore. He said in the military, and if you don't like any of this stuff, if it gives you an uneasy feeling, fine, do the honorable thing and resign. But let me dial the clock back a little bit for a moment. Years ago, I was pointing out the absurdity, in my humble opinion, of DEI deans and social governance deans at the most affluent universities in this country. A number of years ago, I highlighted Stanford University, Stanford in California, the Ivy wannabe, the wannabe of the West. Stanford University, one of our top colleges, they had the social governance dean. And on campus, it was the rule of the land of the new dean there. Paid a lot of money to say to the students and faculty they didn't want gender-related terms on campus, which they defined to be he or she, guy or gal, brother, sister, none of that stuff. So like you couldn't say, hey, brother, how was your swim practice? Hey, bro, how was your lacrosse practice? No, that would be offensive. They said, don't do that. But what I really thought was a doozy, they didn't want you to say the word American at Stanford, American, because it might offend someone who's not an American. Yeah, that's true. And this went on for years. People in corporate America on hiring, diversity, DEI hiring, it had to be a certain category. It wasn't the best person who had the most experience. I told you about a relative of mine who worked decades for a major, let's just say bottling, kind of soda company in America. There are a couple big ones you can decide. And he was running a whole region and state. So when it came time to hire drivers and warehouse managers and assistant managers to make sure those warehouses were full and packed for July 4th and the stores and the trucks ran on time, he wanted to hire the most qualified person who knew that job. who had been driving the truck or doing the deliveries for years, someone next in line to get paid more money and probably some more shares or stock. So he wanted to hire based on qualifications and talent. And he was told by some upper HR person regionally who had more business degrees than he did, he or she would say, no, you got to hire this category of a person, even if you don't have any in your pool. We want this kind of a person. We want that kind of a person. We don't want the most qualified. So this is what's been going on. How about New Hampshire? A couple of years, it wasn't that many years ago. It was on my show. State employees were sending to me the new recommended language to use on the state employee website and words to avoid. True story. I'm not making this up. State of New Hampshire a few years ago during this woke stuff. The state of New Hampshire, like states do and should have, a secure employee portal and website. So it really didn't matter if you were state, the Health and Human Services, state public safety, Marine Patrol, Department of Public Works, prisons, probation. If you were on that as an employee, and there are thousands of employees, obviously, in New Hampshire, on the state employee website, the administrator, whoever she was at the time, I remember this, put out these words to avoid. The gender terms no longer put in emails. Try to avoid he or she, husband, wife, grandparent, grandmother, grandfather. Use parent, use sibling, words like that, not like sister, brother. Avoid gender terms because it might be offensive. If you are involved in a motor vehicle stop, don't use the term American because the person you're stopping may not be from America. You may harm their feelings. This was what was going on a few years ago. Just telling you. And then someone named Chris Sununu heard me going on about it on the show and raising this. And I think he was on later in that hour, next hour. And he said, his only word, not mine. I just was pointing out what the suggested new lingo was on the state employee website. He said, I'm governor. This is nuts. That's all he said. This is nuts. And by 2:30 that afternoon, that page was taken down by order of Governor Chris Sununu. He said, this is nuts. This morning, Pete Hegseth. Why am I talking about that? And by the way, let's just cut to the chase. There are people who are still trying to double down on DEI, diversified, all this stuff. They think it's the rightest thing the most correct thing on earth. There are some school superintendents and school districts and colleges. They're not giving up on this. They want to go all in. And despite the push by the current administration, executive orders, and now Pete Hegseth in the War Department, the era of woke is over. That's his remark this morning in Quantico, Virginia. The day of diversified priorities is over. The day of woke is over. The day of being out of shape physically in the military, you got to be in shape. You can't. He used the term fat, not overweight, is over. And he said, if this gives you a bad feeling in your stomach, do the honorable thing to his military leaders in attendance at Quantico and resign. So that's from Pete Hegseth this morning. And but it's interesting. I think a lot of the stuff has died down on the woke stuff. I think people are chilling out. I really do. I think it's okay to say husband or wife. I don't think people jump on you as much. Not most people. Hey guy, hey gal, hey brother, hey sister. For many years, because I kind of do more than I think some people think I do, respect and understand people's thoughts and opinions. And I try to be respectful. It's how I was raised by my late grandmother. I'm not being facetious or a wise guy at all. Sorry, a wise person. But for many years at the height of this stuff, when I just thought it was going over the top a number of years ago, that's why you've heard me, I should have trademarked it because a lot of people still enjoy it when I would refer to my wife, not as my wife, I would say my smarter, prettier, better half. My smarter, prettier, better half. I said, who can argue with that? Because it's true. My smarter, prettier, better half. So instead of saying my wife in my show the last 8 years, you've heard me say my smarter, prettier, better half instead of my wife. I'd go to events and people would come up to me and sort of laugh and say, I like how you do that. I now call my spouse my smarter, prettier, better half. So the day of woke in the military and military defense, that used to be defense, now Secretary of the War Department, is over, according to Pete Hegseth. John Decker, more on that. He's there covering it. He's live next, our own White House correspondent. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog will also have results from our poll up on X this morning. We lightened it up. Do you think the Red Sox can beat the Yankees? Yes or no? Or will? Not sure. They open up this afternoon. We'll have the games for you. Well, it's a 2 out of 3 in New York. All in New York, by the way. Red Sox Yankees this afternoon, the pregame. 5:08 at the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
New Hampshire.
All right, J-Dogs, we await John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Plenty to talk about with this big meeting of the military at Quantico. Pete Hegseth, Secretary, addressing that, saying that the woke era is over. The woke and diversity focused era is officially over in the military, the U.S. military, and a new era begins. And Pete Hegseth saying, basically, if it puts a bad feeling in your stomach, do the honorable thing and resign, to the military leaders there. He also said that many of the military leaders are not setting a good example. They're overweight. They're out of shape. I mean, this is coming this morning. President Trump going to address the military as well there, the leaders. And John Decker will be updating us on that and the threat or the reality or not of a government shutdown. J-Dog, our results on X from yesterday, I think we had one. Yeah, it's still Benjamin Netanyahu saying, agreeing with the president yesterday, meeting at the White House, saying that he think that they can, but it still seems like a daunting task. But certainly, one would hope it would happen. One would hope it would happen, and then hopefully it lasts and not just like a quick short term. Because you look at the direction of what's happening in Ukraine and Russia's aggressiveness and the reality and concerns of NATO, and then, of course, the Middle East, and both seem almost as far away as they are close to anything, although one would hope that something happens for less war. 603-228-2080. J-Dog, as we get going, we're going to talk a little bit about gold and silver with Adam Ban, Alpine Gold, in a few moments. John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Dean Spiliotis, Southern Hampshire University, one of our political experts in the next hour. We're going to really break down this government shutdown, as well as his reaction on the Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War's announcement this morning that the woke era, the diversity era, the wokeness, the woke era in the U.S. military is over. And we'll get his reaction, as well as who could take the blame politically on a government shutdown and sort of the hypocrisy around the whole thing. And tomorrow on the show, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, we continue our focus on affordable housing, brought to you in part by Ledyard Bank. Affordable housing, people can talk about the problem all day long. We offer solutions and answers. Tomorrow morning, we'll have John Stebbins. We'll be in our studios from Stebbins Building and Construction and Development, and they're focusing on some affordable housing. He'll tell us what he thinks is one of the largest developers or construction companies commercially in the area, what he thinks is needed for affordable housing. And then a little bit later on tomorrow, we'll hear from our friends at New Hampshire Technical Institute, our great community college system, truly leading the way in our overall higher ed studies in this state in terms of demand and the market demand and the affordability. We'll hear from our great partners and friends at New Hampshire Technical Institute. John Decker, waiting for him, J-Dog, and we know when you have him, our own White House correspondent. I want to get his reaction to what's happening in Quantico, Virginia. The Secretary of War, not Defense, it's now called the Secretary of the War Department, the U.S. War Department, not the Department of Defense, the War Department, Secretary of War. And by the way, it's interesting. It's interesting because I only John Decker would know this, I think. We're going to hear, by the way, of one of the U.S. Senate candidates in New Hampshire on the reaction to Pete Hegseth, now the War Department, Secretary of War, saying the era of wokeness and diversity is over. And John, it's very clearly a new day for U.S. military leadership, according to the Secretary, in terms of wokeness and being overweight and diversity focus running the military. John? Good morning, John. Well, I just think this is a very, very clear, direct opening by the Secretary of War. Number one, it's a Secretary of War. That's interesting, as way back, I think it was the War Department. And number two, diversity and wokeness, that era is over for U.S. military leaders. So says the boss. John, but this is this gets cultural. This will get picked up. This will get talked about. This will get reacted to, because Pete Hegseth, what caught me when I heard the live clips this morning, he didn't use the word overweight. One of his lines was, "You treat those units like your own kids. Do you want them serving and fighting with fat members?" You know, he's going right at this. Diversity mentioned, so, and I don't know. He had some line. You were there. Something about, you won't see, I don't know. So I'm almost reluctant to say this, something like you won't see those who shouldn't be wearing dresses. I mean, he really was very direct on the anti-woke stuff. Sure. Do you pick up being there? Because I remember going as a civilian to the U.S. Army War College. You get a sense when you're talking to them offline in the hallways about morale under the new administration within the War Department. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And real fine. I know you're covering that, John Decker, our White House correspondent. You have a good sense on Capitol Hill, though, on the White House, and I'm sure you'll get a chance to ask the president a question later. Do you think there'll be an 11th or 12th hour deal to avoid a government shutdown, or do you think are we headed to one? And what do you think could happen here? Do you think there'll be a break in the action in terms of a deal or not? John Decker, thank you. Great stuff. John Decker, live, our own White House correspondent. John Decker, our White House correspondent. When John was speaking near the end of one of my questions about morale in the U.S. military, he said recruitment's up. It's interesting how, and I understand it. I get it, but sometimes like a lot of people, it's like nails on a chalkboard, although a lot of younger people don't even know what a chalkboard is from the old days in school. But speaking of recruitment, we've had a public safety recruitment crisis in this country for many years. What I mean is state police right here in New Hampshire, and I think we're one of the more thank you, appreciative, grateful public safety states in the nation per capita. But one recent point, and maybe now, I don't know if it's that high, but there were 70, not 70 open salaried state police position that were open positions. I know that firefighters have had a challenge. We just heard from the head of the New Hampshire Firefighters Association the other day, head of the Firefighters Memorial. He was on saying that they, if you're even interested in doing anything, they need help. Firefighters, the recruitment's down, EMTs, public safety, frontline people, law enforcement, sheriff's deputy. I mean, local police, all the local police departments, which really are the reason we have such a great wall of public safety in this state. So recruitment has been down, but it's interesting. Things are so politicized right now on immigration enforcement. Let's just be totally candid here. The president sending federal troops to Portland. Governor of, I think, Louisiana. I don't know if you caught this. The governor of Louisiana not fighting back, saying they made progress on crime. The governor of Louisiana asking the Trump administration, National Guard, for 1,000 federal troops in Louisiana. That's the governor of Louisiana saying crime is getting too bad. We need help. We need help. So all this, the things being politicized, and all the anger that you see on both sides or the aisles, and what happened in Dallas, Texas, at that ICE facility with the shooting at the transfer of the detainees in the Dallas, Texas ICE. And yet, I've seen people repost online, and I'm sure you've seen it watching football games, streaming shows. You've seen the ad. I can cue it up if you haven't. In fact, I might here, because I even noticed now on the search now they have the AI version, but the ICE ad offering a $50,000 bonus. Have you seen the ad? America Needs You. It's getting reaction because it's playing a lot. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is offering up to a $50,000 signing bonus for ICE. A $50,000 signing bonus for ICE to join ICE as part of a major recruitment push this year. The incentive is pretty getting a lot of reaction. I've seen people kind of repost it. And apparently ICE has been getting more applications. I want to play. ICE commercial recruitment audio, and they're getting a um, more. Let's just listen to the ad. I think we have it here.
For a limited time, get any
That's a
pizza
well,
with
you got to
any
have the
top-
Domino pizza ad before the ad, but a $50,000 signing bonus to join ICE, and it's getting a lot of reaction. So we'll cue that up. J Doc can do that. He's dealing with some sports stuff, but it's interesting.
For a limited time, get
And we'll come back with that. But I think it's interesting is I've seen people post it and they can't stand it that ICE is offering a $50,000 bonus to join ICE, and it's just getting the same. It's a commercial for recruitment to join ICE, but because of ICE and the whole controversy and the politics over ICE immigration, the Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles railing against it. The Governor Pritzker of Chicago saying we don't want federal troops here. They don't want more ICE immigration enforcement roundups. What happened in LA, the so-called protest against ICE immigration actions in LA that resulted in riots and violence. I mean, come on. Are you serious? Most people look at this going, in Los Angeles, California, talk about crime. While these so-called peaceful riots were happening, the burning of the cars in the interstate, cinder blocks being thrown in broad daylight from the overpasses and the highways at police vehicles, that's peaceful. But I love at night. I didn't love it at all, actually. It was disgusting. 12, 15 thugs and punks armed with baseball bats and weapons going into this port. There was one video of this guy in a store, like a convenience store, just mowing the guy over, hitting with a baseball bat, robbing his store. That had a lot to do with ICE. I mean, come on. So the reaction of ICE by Mayor Karen Bass saying, we're making progress. Our crime numbers aren't as bad as COVID. That was the standard line. Our Chicago coming out of Labor Day. Remember Chicago? I do. How many people were killed? How many shootings? How many violent crimes in Chicago that weekend? It blew your mind. And the governor of Illinois saying our numbers they're not as bad as they were a few years ago. Oh my goodness. So the ICE ads are getting even reaction. The $50,000 signing bonus. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. We'll come back. We'll talk about the price of gold and silver on the Pulse of an H. Keep it right here. Now, I'll let you be the judge before we bring in Adam Van with Adam Alpine Gold. I'll let you be the judge. The ads I were trying to pull, for example, Sacramento, California, Sacramento. These are some of the ads, paid ads for ICE recruitment airing on local radio and television.
And help us catch the worst of the worst. Drug traffickers, gang members, predators.
ICE recruitment.
$50,000 signing bonus. Help us catch the worst of the worst. Child kidnappers, drug dealers, murderers. Help us catch the worst of the worst. $50,000 signing bonus for ICE. And we'll have more on that. That's getting reaction. We'll also have more on Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, announcing the era of wokeness and woke diversity DEI policies in the military are and is over. Plain and simple. He was very direct, saying to the military leaders gather to Quantico, if this gives you a bad feeling in your stomach, because we're going to get into shape, many of our military leaders, he said, many of you are overweight. These are the words he used. And he's talked about this before. The diversity and the wokeness is over in the U.S. military. And if you don't like it, you can do the honorable thing and resign. We're going to get more reaction. And Adam with Alpine Gold and silver, always doing new stuff for members. And if you're a listener of the Pulse, you can go to alpinegold.com and easily buy some silver, some gold backs, and use the term together as one word, the Pulse, at shipping. At checkout, the Pulse, one word, at checkout, and get free shipping. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Jack. Thanks for having me on. You're right. You can definitely get free shipping by putting in the Pulse, all one word, at checkout. You do have to go through the whole checkout process. It's the very last thing you do. So if you don't click checkout, you won't get to put the coupon code in. It's the very last thing, but you put in the Pulse at checkout, and absolutely free shipping.
Why do I always, when I'm doing stuff online, I always forget that last button, like continue or checkout. I always forget that one. You can't, right? Okay. Go ahead, Adam. Oh no, yours is very good and clean. Take it away. What do you have for us this morning?
All of these things are pushing gold up in spite of a stronger dollar and stronger, GDP. So the dollar got stronger and gold still went up. These are sustained.
This company is going viral.
So we're looking at gold and silver continuing to rise through the end of the year, through the holiday season, probably all the way through the first quarter of next year. And now is a good time to hedge your investment with gold and gold and silver, an asset that you can physically hold. And silver, in my opinion, it's got a higher opportunity to rise than gold because we smashed $45 last week, $45 an ounce for silver. And this Monday we opened at $47 and it's holding above 45. So as markets do, they just go up and down, but they go up all the time. I don't think we're going to get below $45 an ounce on silver anytime soon, and I think it's going to continue to rise. So I recommend that you buy some gold, buy some silver, and I'm a pretty good guy. I think you should buy it from Alpine Gold. So come see us at 1800 Elm Street, and we'll talk about gold and silver. We have some holiday offerings too that are coming up this year. So if you deposit $500 on your UPMA account, that's an online gold account, we will give you a free Silver Eagle. So we've got some good holiday offerings coming up for that. And of course, we're always trying to support your message and with veterans, your message on the radio. So we're always having some sort of an offer for people that mention the radio.
Yeah, and use Say Jack or the radio when you go there, and you can join as well. It's you can buy or join the Pulse and get extra services. Adam, well, you were right about silver. You've been right about this all along, and certainly with things like a looming government shutdown and soaring debt and the value of the dollar or inflationary pressures and the weakening value of the dollar, it bodes well to diversify and get something that you can hold and touch and is real and it's not going to go backwards, right?
and you want to be diversified. And the reason why we want to be diversified in our investments is because we don't know what's going to go up and what's going to go down. We hope it all goes up, right? We hope we're batting 1,000. But when you're buying things for long-term investments, you don't know what's going to go up and what's going to go down. But you know what's never gone to zero is gold. There's a 5,000-year history. It's recognized throughout the world. You can go international, and everyone knows what gold is. It's never worth zero. It's always been traded in our marketplace. And having 10% of your holdings, 10% of your wealth in gold or silver. I like gold. I'm biased towards gold, but gold, silver, precious metals, any physical asset like that that's recognized internationally, it's not going to go to zero. And I think it's a great hedge. I just realized I got a note here. We're going to have going into the fourth quarter. It's not available today, but it's available tomorrow. When you buy a full set of gold bags, we're going to give you a free Silver Eagle too. That's going to be another holiday offering that we have. A full set of collectible gold bags. These are going to be discontinued. They're redoing all the artwork on them. So when you buy a full set, not only are you getting a collector set that you can give away as a Christmas gift, you also get a free Silver Eagle. So we're just rolling out the red carpet for everybody and all the dear listeners for this.
Interesting stuff. Well, a lot of good fun stuff happening, and I just think it's a peace of mind thing. I really do. I think like real estate, it's real. Gold and silver, you don't want to go backwards, right? And if you can make a little bit and it can grow, it's a good peace of mind. So thank you, even for your retirement stuff, even weekly, monthly. Just take a little bit out and go online. You can probably make your buys automatic, right?
That's right, Jack. You're really a forward thinker in this, and you're really thinking long term. We have gold IRAs, and we have a very unique program where you buy gold, you hold it in our vault as it is, as it goes, and then we pay you a 2% fee for being able to use that gold. So not only does it go in at tax advantage and come out tax advantage when you're 59 and a half, your gold IRA gains interest in gold, and we pay you in gold. That is completely unique. We're the only people that offer that. So if you like gold and you want to buy gold long term, put it into a gold IRA and get a 2% interest on your gold as you're planning for your retirement.
All right.
It's a great deal.
All right, alpinegold.com, the pulse, alpinegold.com. Thank you, Adam. Coming up, we'll get a reaction from one of the U.S. Senate candidates to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's remarks that the woke diversity era in the U.S. military is over. That's next.